Hey guys, my name is Nogan and welcome to my generic algorithm series. So today guys, we can be focused on the fourth part of the analysis program of generic algorithms. So today we'll be touching on something that we did in our C++ series, where we focus on learning what is arrays and the different types of dimensions of arrays, from one-dimensional to two-dimensional arrays. Now in this video, today we just focus on trying to analyze a question again, applying those principles again we learned from what is introduction to arrays, what is one-dimensional, what is two-dimensional arrays in C++ in this generic algorithms fourth episode here. So guys, if you haven't watched the previous video of this series, I'm link a card on top there. In the video we're building a fraction calculator, analyzing also a question in there from scratch, which it was like a 1 hour long episode. So just check it out guys for your own like information and maybe for entertainment and stuff. So before we start guys, let's just set everything up properly here. Now in this main.cpp file here, we just like can set up a few functionalities and how to build the program. So let's just say hash include just a few basic principles of how a standard C++ program looks like. So after this, we're going to be analyzing a question today, like I mentioned, but analyzing it from perspective where we see how can we build a program that requires us to use arrays as a means of like analysis. So guys, our generic algorithm question today is going to be basically based on arrays. So let's just hop here and look at our question. So guys, as you can see right now here currently, we have a question that says now define the following. So basically it says now define a two-dimensional array, as you can see basically here, array, but now this array has a name called temp. So the following is important, which means the array eventually now has to have a few things eventually. It has to have 3 rows, as you can see here, and also it has to have 4 columns. And in this question, they give us all some certain information or data to use. As you can see, it has to be of type int, as you can see here, and also such that the first row, which is of course when it's been initialized, has to have this number of initializations here, as you can see. So basically now it means that now, based on this question here, to define a two-dimensional array of name temp of 3 rows and also 4 columns of the type integer, such that now the first row of the initialization has to be numbers of 6, 8, 12, and 9 fundamentally, which means the first row will contain this integers here, and also the second row will contain now the numbers of 17, as you can see here, 5, 10, and also 6. In the last row is going to be containing 14, 13, 16, and 20, as you can see here, fundamentally. So basically the question is very straightforward, because now it gives you data to initialize based on what is being expected now from you to design a program. And afterwards again, now the A speaks about, now suppose that that array temp is defined in an exercise in textbook C++ here, but fundamentally the point is that now write a statement, as you can see here, to accomplish the following task here. So fundamentally these bullet points from A to D needs to be executed, because the output the contents of the first row in first column elements, as you can see, based on the temp of the array name, and also output the contents of the first row the last column, output the contents of the last row the first column, which means you have to select the index of those numbers accordingly. So guys, let's jump onto C++ to Visual Studio so we can start writing our program. So basically based on the question here, fundamentally we need to build a two-dimensional array. So if you guys don't know what a two-dimensional array, I'll link a card on top there. Go and check it out, because in a video I explained what is a one-dimensional and a two-dimensional array in C++. So go and check it out, give like a more deep understanding how to define them, how to initialize them and how to use them also. So when you come into this video, you have like an understanding how to build a program that requires to use arrays. So fundamentally now here in a program, based on the question as you can see here, to define a two-dimensional array of name, temp, and has have 3 rows and 4 columns. So in the main function here, defining a two-dimensional array. Also, so it's going to be an int type, and it's going to be temp. Now this is going to have how many rows? It's going to have 3 rows and also going to have 4 columns. Awesome. Now when you initialize this array here, fundamentally, when using square bracket, guys, you have to include a semicolon after on the closing bracket to make sure that now it's been registered here in the main function as a array. So in this body of this temp array, when I have a following data being displayed here, so you need to have the first row initialized to this numbers, as you can see here, 6, 8, 12, and add-on 17, 5, and also 14, 13. So basically now the first row will contain the following here. So we'll have the first row can be 6, 8, 12, and also 9. Now I have to include a comma here to now eventually try and separate the number, like the rows of initialization of arrays. For example, here this is the first row here, so using now this comma to eventually try to separate those rows in this temp array index here. So now we have now the second row is going to be 17, 5, 10, and 6. Comma again. The last row is going to contain the following, should be 14, 13, 16, and also 20. Awesome. So let's go to guys to our questions just to check, like, did we manage to include all the information that is required for the initialization, the definition of the array. Awesome. So with our array being displayed here fundamentally, so as you can see, we have data being given us based on the question that the following needs to happen, as you can see. So fundamentally, based on what has happened, guys, is that we need to now eventually have an output system. We have to output certain data to the user. So the question speaks about here, output the contents of the first row in the first column element in the temp. Now the first row is going to be given by here. Now guys, in arrays store data in terms of like an index, but the index now starts from 0. So the first index row is going to be 0 here for this row. The second one here will be 1, and the third index will be 2. But again, remember, this is a two-dimensional array. Same applies also now for the columns. In the columns also, we'll have in a column here where now the column starts from 0 also here, from 0, which means it'll be 0 also here, zero. Here we have 1, we have 2, and also have 3. So basically this is how arrays have been stored in a computer. By definition or by default, it starts from 0, 0 in the row or in the column. So fundamentally now, if you look at what is expected from us here to output the contents of the first row of the first column, which means the first row here is going to be 0. Now the first column is going to be also 0, which is going to be 6. So if you say now here using the CL statement cout, output first row and first column. So basically now when you have to output an array, you have to call the name of the array, which is going to be temp. Now the index here, we're looking for the first row in the first column, is going to be 0 and also 0. It's going to be 0, 0. Okay, so after, let's just include an end line. Okay, so guys, this is now our output here, basically based on the first output statement from the questions as you see here from A, which speaks about now you have to output the first row, which is in the first column element in that array of name temp. So the second one is going to be output not the first row but the last column in there. If you look at now here again, basically now the first row is going to be now again of 6, 8, 12, 9. But fundamentally we have to output now the what? The last column in the row, which means fundamentally going to be 3. So let's highlight this, copy this, and paste it now a few more times, basically based on the questions here, because how many times it needs to be 4 output statements. So let's paste it 3 more times here. Now fundamentally here, the second output has to be the output of the first row, but now the last column. Spelling was a little off here. Let me just fix the spelling. Looks like my spelling is a bit off. Maybe. Okay, spelling's on point. Awesome. So basically here we're gonna have, wait, here it looks like a little weird. Yeah, now it's English. Space also here. Now I'm speaking English now. Awesome. Okay, so which means basically the second output statement has to be the, let me just say here, the first, this is the first output. Okay, third output. Also make it fourth output. Awesome. So okay, the second output is going to be this. So basically when I change now index here from the first in the first row, which is going to be 0, but now the last column in it is going to be the index of 4, but 4 now will be eventually be 3 because it starts from 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, awesome. Now again, to say the third output has to be the last row, but now the first column in element in that, which means the last row is going to be what? The last row is going to be now the 1, 4, 14, 13, 16, and 20. So fundamentally here now, the last row will be now here 2, but in there the first column is going to be 0. It's displayed here. Okay, now the fourth row or the fourth output has to be based on the output statement here, the last row, the last column, which should be eventually here maybe 2 and also 3. So before we run a program, guys, let's try and have an assumption here. So we're assuming here fundamentally now the output here number for the first row is going to be 6, and the output number here for the second row is going to be, because based on the index, going to be the same index, the first one here, but looking for the third index, going to be 9. This will be 3, 9. So which means the third output has to be the first row again, the first one. Let me change something here. This needs to be the last row, but now the first column. Awesome. Now here is going to be the last row, the last column, last row, last column. Let's fix my output statements also here, and first row, last column. Awesome. Awesome. So guys, now the third row, which means going to be the second index here, is going to be the last index is going to be this one of 14, 13, 16, 20, but now the output will be the first number index, going to be 14 based on the output statement. Now here fundamentally we speak about now the last it's going to be the last row again, the last number, which means going to be again the last row of 14, and also the last number in is going to be 20. Awesome. So guys, now let's click on Control Shift B to compile a program before we run a program. You see, is there any syntax errors now in our program? Awesome. Run our program. Go to local debugger, so run our program and see the output of this program. Awesome. So guys, you can see now basically now based on our output statements here, we have 6, 9, 14 and 20 based on our assumption. So we assume that now basically that our output statements here will be corresponding to what we're seeing here. As you can see, let's make this smaller. We have our output statements here, 6 being displayed, 9, 14, also 20. So basically based on the output or the output statements on the questions, which means the first row of the first statement in the first column in there, which is going to be 0, the index 0 and also 0, as you can see here. So fundamentally now our logic behind the designer program now is on point what we did here. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any question guys about this program here, and feel free also to if you want to just like try to write this question down for yourself and also analyze it from a perspective, and you can just try and build it from scratch also like to see, and also like try to include a few. For example, you can also now try to increase now the rows here from 3 rows here to a number of 6 rows. Let's say just make them 6, and also the columns here from 4 to 8 columns. Sort of my bad handwriting guys, but you get the picture. Then you can just increase the number of like the initializations also. So when you do that now, you can just see how eventually your program's going to be looking out eventually. So guys, as I mentioned again, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel also. Thank you for watching.